Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Tryon. The time is finally here. We are going to be assembling the quilt top for the Barn Star block of the month. And this is so exciting. You know, for the last almost year, all of these blocks have been sitting in a big pile. And now we're finally ready to put them together. So a few tips before we get going, because for most of us, this is going to be fairly straightforward sewing, but there's some organization that maybe I can help you with a little bit. And you'll notice in the Barn Star book, this is what we've been working from all year, all of 2024 in our block of the month. That's finally coming to fruition here. We've built all of these blocks, and now we need to assemble them. So we're starting on page 39 to make this gorgeous quilt. Read through a little bit of what they're suggesting. They're reminding you how much you need for the binding, how much fabric you need for the backing, 7.5 yards or 2.5 of 108 wide. If you need some backing fabric, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to help. And there's just some different, tips for assembling the quilt block that, I'm going to end up going through a little bit with you here too. Things like, they're asking for us to press our seam allowances open. I'd recommend, if you're going to get this long armed, that you go one way or the other for a sturdier quilt. But if you do press them open, that's not a big deal. Really, just, sometimes when they get long armed, the stitch can go right in the middle. Typically nothing happens, but it's just better safe than sorry. One thing to remind you of is that as we were building this quilt top, it was important to trim each of these blocks to their to the size that they were meant to be trimmed to. So make sure that they're all trimmed to their accurate size, and you'll find that in each block, along the way. So you could verify back if you needed to. The other thing I would suggest is, if you were like me, all the blocks sort of went in one pile. And yes, they were kind of in order, but there was a bit of a over time also. Now is the time to get organized with it. So Amanda helped me here. Amanda from the homemade team, she's amazing and very organized. And look at how we've done this. Section 1, number 1, or section A, number 1, section A, number 2, section A, number 3. Put all of the blocks in their required sections. This is going to help you stay organized because there is a lot of them. Look at all of these sections. Okay. And right now we can bring in the section that we're working on, which is section A. Go ahead. We can bring that graphic in. Did we do it at the beginning? I don't think so. So right now we are working on section A. Section A, yes, section A is going to be quite a few blocks from the first half of the book. So section A is what we're going to work on now, and I'll announce when we move on to section B. Because these blocks are all kinds of different sizes, we can't just sew them all together like we would a regular quilt, block after block after block. We need to put them together in sections, and they've worked out for us how those sections fit together. So you'll notice in section A, number 1, when you put block 5 with block 11 and block 10, that's going to make a size that fits together quite nicely next to what's going on in, another section. Sorry, I should say, this fits quite nicely next to block 1, which was our very first enormous block. So by putting those 3 blocks together, you basically have the size of the first block we did, and then those can go together. Do you know what I mean? Things like that. So it is important to go through the sections, organize things out. Section A, number 1, requires this block, and this block. And then section A, number 2, requires, and you'll be able to tell in the book. Let me just get back to the page here. So section 2, for example, requires block 12, which is this one, and block 13 to go together with block 9, and that's this one. So if you go ahead and parcel those out, into their little sections, this is going to help the sewing, the assembly part of this quilt come together much, much quicker, rather than like, where is that block? Can't remember. I don't know. You know what I mean? So that's what I would suggest. So I'm going to take my big pile and set it over to the side and just pull section A number 1 for right now. And I'll keep section A number 2 and 3 waiting in the wings. Now, a couple things. I'm using sewing clips to keep these all together. Just a few supplies that aren't necessarily essential, but that are going to help you stay organized and put this together as efficiently and, expertly as possible. A couple things I'm using. A tailor's clapper for the seams. We want everything nice and flat. And this would be the time, if you have a block clapper, this is going to allow your entire block to stay nice and flat during the pressing process. So have your iron close by. I'm going to set these on the ironing board and use those as we go. The other thing I'm going to be using, that obviously little snips, is the, where did I set that now? Is it rolled? It's rolled under the extension table. If you have an extension table for your sewing machine, pull it out. Now's a good time. And I'm also using the stiletto. This is the homemade stiletto. If you have one from a previous box, this would be a great time to get it out. And it's basically for making sure any of those big humps that we're going to be sewing over are getting under that 1/4 inch foot, no problem, and you keep your fingers far away. So I'm going to keep these tools handy. I got a seam ripper and obviously some little snips, because I'm also starting with a fresh red tip needle in my machine because we've been sewing and sewing and sewing for months. And maybe it's been a while since you changed the needle. And if you're getting that thudding sound, a fresh needle is the way to go. Okay, so let's get going. We're going to start section A, section 1, right here, block 5, block 11, and block 10. And you're going to start just by laying them out like we always have. And these 2 blocks are going to go together first, and then we're going to sew them to the bigger block. So block 10 and block 11, right sides together, and a 1/4 inch seam. Now, if you need to pin, because these are fairly large, and you want to make sure, then you can go ahead and do that. That's up to you and your own comfort level at the sewing machine. Still using the 1/4 inch foot. And this is where this comes in here. With some of those, don't run over your pins, with some of, because we've got so many humps and bumps here, it just allows you to hang on with a sharp point to something that's kind of puffy and lumpy like this, so that it doesn't get folded down in the wrong direction. And you can hold on to it right under that presser foot until it gets to the needle there. There we go. And now we do want to press this before it gets attached to the top block. Making sure I've laid it out in the right order. Yep. All right, I'm going to bring this to the ironing board. And they're suggesting that we press these seams open, but they're also saying in the sewing tips that you might find your piece naturally wants to go one way or the other. If it does, don't fight it too much. It's not all of these seams are going to nest, and that's totally fine. What you just want to make sure is that you don't leave fabric inadvertently sort of tucked under anywhere. You want to make sure nothing's like being hidden in the seams. And then when you get this pressed, you can put your clapper on there for a minute so that it sets. Nice and flat. And then we can bring this to the bigger block 5. And let's make sure it's the right way. There we go. Are we as zoomed? Do you think we can? Yeah. Maybe I'll move this so that you guys can see a little bit better. And then again, we're just going right sides together. And now there's going to be times where you're looking at your blocks going, huh, wow, did I really do a number on that block? Why is it not fitting? Or why is it a little like shorter or longer than it's supposed to be? Again, look at the trimming and make sure you've trimmed everywhere that needed to be trimmed. Maybe it needs another pressing. For example, when I'm looking at this block, it's got a little bit of a hump here. So just bring it to your ironing board and make sure things are lying as flat as they're supposed to. The other thing you can kind of check is the final measurement on when you made this block. Did you in fact trim it? Sometimes if you're like me, maybe you were you finish and you're like, good, done, goodbye. Did I actually trim that block? It's been months and months. So if I look back at block 5, right? So if we're doing block 5 and we come all the way to the end of block 5, it'll say should measure 6.5 or 16.5 by 16.5. So if you're looking at your block like, oh, did I trim that? Then just do that little bit of a verification and lay it out. And if you need to check it, check it. So 16.5 by 16.5, I'll check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.5. We're a smidge over on there. So this one could be trimmed up a little. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.5. A little smidge. So if your seams are looking like they're not totally square, then maybe you missed a little trim. So make sure you're doing that before it comes together, and doing a little secondary check like I've done here. If it looks a little like, maybe that wasn't trimmed when we put it together. So just squaring this up. And then you're going to notice everything comes together even nicer. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.5. And same on the other side too. $16.5. Okay. So now when I bring that block over back to my assembly, nice, lining up even better. So just keep a watch for that as you go to make sure that everything is nice and square. I'm sure I'll find a few as I go that I didn't trim up. And again, just a 1/4 inch seam. And there's going to be so many seams facing in different directions. This is where I'm going to hold on. see that flipping. If you see it flipping, you can lift up, get that in there, flip it back down. If you have speed control too, slow down if things are feeling a little out of control. You don't have to go top speed. Especially when you're fiddling with things. It's hard to move fast when the machine's going fast. Sometimes slower is faster, right? We know this. Okay. So down we go, and we can press that seam. Now I know I'm going to long arm this, so I'm going to press it to the side just to be safe. If you would like us to long arm yours, you do get a special deal on long arming. If you send us back your Barn Star sampler, we're happy to long arm it for you. So you can reach out to us at info@homemade.ca. If you would like your Barn Star long armed, I will be happy to do it for you. Okay, there we go. That is section A number 1. And then I'm going to just go ahead and put my little Post-it note right back on here with my clip, because we're not to the part of assembling section A yet. We still need to do part 2 and part 3. So I'm going to set this to the side and bring over section A part 2. Okay, section A part 2. That consists of blocks 12 and 13. So this is block 12. This is block 13. And then they're going to be attached to block 9, but at the bottom this time. And we can flip. Right sides together. And a 1/4 inch seam. Okay. And I'm going to press. Give that a second under the clapper. And now I've got block 9 ready to go. It's already nice and trimmed, I can tell. And this is going to make sure I've got them on the right sides. Yes, there we go. And I'm going to sew that right across. Remember, if you need to use pins, go ahead. Pins can help when you're doing stuff that's large. Take a second to make sure everything's nice and flush. Okay, this one's going up. And I'll press it. Take your chance now to not just press the seams, but give everything a little press. Okay, that is section A, number 2. Coming together quick. So I'm going to put that right back on, and we'll grab number 3. So number 3 is our big block and section 1 and 2. So this is a bit of a big, you'll need a bit of a table here. You could use your ironing board. And essentially what's going to happen here in section 3 is that we're going to join the first block, the first, like section A, number 1, to block 1. And then we're going to do section 2 to block 2. So these 2 are the big blocks that we made very early on. And they measure the same 24 inches. Remember when we made those? They took forever. And here they are. Okay, so let's grab section 1. Pause. Section 1. Okay, so I've got section, take the clip and the Post-it, section 1A, which is going to be joined to block 1. So this big guy here is going to go right sides together with this one. And we're going to have a 1/4 inch seam all the way down here. So pins could definitely help you here. I like these big blocks. They really feel like progress. All right, there's going to be so many seams along this journey here, so careful they're not flipping up. Make sure I'm staying flush. Oh, that seam is flipping over. Lift up my presser foot. If your needle has the ability to stay down, this would be a good time to activate it. Then you don't lose your spot if you have to lift your presser foot up. See how this little flap here, it's kind of wanting to stick up. So I'm going to flatten it down with my stiletto here and get that right underneath the, don't run over my pin. Same with this one, wants to flip up, so I'm keeping it down with my stiletto. Needle down. Let's get this nice and flat here. Even at the ends, when they want to shift, if you kind of hold it, there you go. Okay. Progress. Lots of good progress here. Okay, I'm going to take the section A, number 2. And block 2, so that's this one. And this, and same thing, right sides together. Make sure everything is laying nice and flush. I'm just putting a pin in the middle. Keep me honest along the way. Just making sure I'm staying flush here. Yep. And you'll notice I haven't pressed yet because I'll press at the end when I've sewn these two to the other two. Okay, good. This is so big. It's gonna be great. Okay, this way it actually goes. And oh, look what I did. Okay, this is a reminder to you to pay attention which way the blocks are running. These two small blocks are supposed to be on top. So I'm going to just take this out and redo it really quickly because I want it to be going the right way. And I guarantee this will probably happen to you too. So everything that happens to me, be warned. Be warned. Isn't it satisfying when the seam ripper, you get a long stretch and it just goes? My tip for that is to lay it on a flat surface, hold down behind your seam ripper so everything's nice and taut, and just move it forward. Okay, pay better attention, Jen. All right, we got the big block. Turn this one right side up. And there we go. It's because I natter on and don't pay attention, you know? There we go. Better to just do it again. Do it right. Okay, take two. Were you guys shouting at me through the screen the whole time I was doing that, or? Sometimes when I go back and read the comments, I was like, they knew before I knew. They tried to warn me. But I couldn't hear them over the hum of my sewing machine. Okay, There we go. Better. So now we can go ahead and join in the middle our section 2 with block 1. So lay it out. I know it's big. It's a lot to lay out. Over we go. But I love how fast this is coming together, despite unforeseen seam ripping. It really is coming together quick. I'm going to put a couple clips in here because it's heavy and big. Off we go. And again, this block 1 has so many Okay. It's really real. It looks amazing. Okay. This is where my big squared off ironing board is going to come in handy. Got my block clapper here. Lay it down and make sure all those seams are pressed. Again, I'm pressing my seams to the side because I'm going to long arm this. That seems to be the way they want to go anyway. But just remember, you can make a special effort for the seams to nest, but they may not nest if you're pressing to one side or the other. Naturally wants to fall back, so I'll go with it. And I'll just take a minute to give this a whole nice press. I dropped my bottle of flatter the other day and the top broke off. So I put my flatter in one of our new spray bottles. I love these little spray bottles. They're like the misters. And so I can just give it a good, ooh, it smells so nice. Got the flatter on there in that Mr. water bottle. Get this nice and pressed. It's kind of a trip down memory lane. Like I haven't seen this block 1 in so long. It was so much work, but it's so beautiful. Okay. All right, you guys, that is section A. Take a look. Okay, I'm going to set this aside and we're going to start with section B. All right, section B. We're going to do the same kind of thing. We've just got some different blocks to deal with. Again, it's all organized. Section B, part 1. This is where we've got all of those tiny little blocks that's going to mix with the big block 3 that we did at the beginning. And then block, we've got block 20, block 16, another block 20, and another block 16 that kind of go in a row here. And we're going to go ahead and sew this row together before we add it to this row. So I've already sewn these 2 together, these 2, and these 2. So we're literally just attaching this row. But you can, I just wanted you to see how you can lay it out. I kind of think I like the blue being in the center the best. So I'm going to flip that around. Okay, right sides together. You know the drill. It's all right sides together, and you're going to do that whole row before we attach it to our big block 3. And right sides together on that one. And just get that whole row together. Those seams are thick on those little blocks. Okay, now once I've got my chain, ooh, went right off the seam here. Did I run out of bobbin thread? No. I need to give this another little snip. So sometimes I'd encourage you to check your sewing before, because I had a little hole right here. So that now has come out. Make sure because sometimes if you have some wonky seams, which I always do, you got to make sure that they're catching. There we go. Onward. Okay, no holes, all good. Bring it to the ironing board. I'm just gonna hold it up and press them all the same direction. Out of frame here. Here we go. So we've got it. And then we're going to go right sides together. So now this one on mine, maybe one of these blocks wasn't trimmed or this got trimmed too much, but I've got a little extra on my length on the end here and a little extra on the end here. So if this happens to you, at this point, there's not much we can do other than try to salvage our points as best we can and split the difference. So I'm going to line this up in the middle as best I can, unless I can see somewhere along the way here. No, where there's lots of extra white between the points, there isn't. So I'm just going to, maybe this one got trimmed a little too happily. That could be the case. So I'm just going to split the difference and take a little off of each side and have a little off of each side hang over. And I'm not going to worry too much about it, because in the grand scheme of this big, very busy, scrappy looking quilt, the odd little point here or there is not worth losing sleep over. It's still going to be beautiful and great, even if the odd little point wasn't as perfectly pointy as you thought it might be. Once I get this whole quilt top together, I'm going to go through a few things that I learned along the way. And maybe you learned them too, or maybe you'll learn from me. But I think it's important to take these moments when you complete a big project like this and kind of reflect back on what you can do now that you really either struggled with at the beginning or have really kind of perfected. And as you go back to some of the earlier blocks, you may take a look at your sewing and go, huh, I have come a long way even since that block. You know, that was earlier, much, much earlier in the year. So I'm sure we've all come a long way since then. Make sure we're flush. Okay. Look how nice. All right, I'm going to give this a press. See, I've got a little off the end and a little off the end. But you don't see me crying about it, do ya? You don't see me ripping or recutting. We're going with it. And yeah, some will need to get trimmed, obviously, but it's okay. This is wanting to fold this way. All right. The quilt always wins. The quilt gets what the quilt wants. Unless it's to be longer on that end, in which case it's going to get trimmed. Then I win. Go ahead and flatten this all out too. Look how nice. And you know what? I can see here, because I'm talking about why this might be a little bit longer. I can see in this block how much I've folded into my seam here, where I could have pressed that open better and probably gotten almost a 1/4 inch. So you can usually always find where the error or the bunching occurs. But at this point, unless I'm going to resew this and resew this, otherwise I'm going to leave it. But I could take this out and push this over and probably gain a little bit extra fabric there. But I'm going to leave it for now. We'll see when we're done filming all this how ambitious I am. But I doubt it. I'm going to just put it all together. It's all good. All right. That is section B number 1. Keep my little section B number 1 ticket on there. And we'll move over to section B number 2. Okay. So leave it in the wings. So section B number 2 has got lots of little elements to it, doesn't it? It's got the big tulip block, the number 4. So I'll set that aside for a minute and bring in the parts that really need working on. And that's our little blocks and our number 11 and number 13. So I've got number 11 here, number 13. Oh, I love this block. Well, I love them all, but I really love this one. And then we're going to lay out all of our number 19s, and I've just staggered them dark, light, dark, light. I've already sewn these two together, but you see you need to sew two, and then sew those ones together for a row of 4. Yay. And then before I go to the ironing board, since I'll go to the ironing board all at one time, I'll sew right sides together here. And now this one looks like a little, I'm going to just check the trimming on this one. I've got a little bit of, that's probably the way the flying geese was made, but I'm just going to make sure that it measures. So that is block 11. So I'm just flipping back to block 11, and it's meant to measure 8.5 by 8.5. So let's just see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. It's just right here dipping out a little beyond a half. So I'm going to give that a little trim up. Either I didn't trim it or I did a crummy job trimming it. Both could be true, you know? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. This one's right on the money. So it's just that one side. Just that one side. All right, make sure these are on the right sides again. And right sides together. And now we don't have that little belly sticking out. Okay, and so now this needs to be pressed and this row needs to be pressed before we sew it together here. Press this whole thing, let it live under the block clapper for a little while. It's going to stay nice and flat while I press this one. And as I get through the sides, I can okay. Now we're going to put these two together. Right sides together just like that. I'm just making up for a little smidge in my seam allowance here, so I moved my needle over a little bit. Okay. Cute. See a little bit here that needs a little extra. There we go. Give this a press. Although I guess I could wait until, because this is coming on top and this one is freshly pressed. So we can go right sides together and bring it to the ironing board all at the same time. So right sides together. Make sure everything's nice and lined up. Just clipping it in the middle to stay on track. And off we go. So make sure this doesn't flip up. Okay, now I can bring this to the ironing board. Give that a press. This is wanting to fall that way, so just see some other spots that could use a little fresh press. Okay. Okay. There we go. That, this way, is section 2. Nice. All right, I'm going to keep the label on it. And I'm going to grab B, section 3. It's an easy one. So this little one, we've just got block 15, and we've got block 16 and block 20. And so those two are going to go together, and then they are going to go together onto block 15, right sides together. Okay, can take it to the ironing board. I'm going to let that just rest under the clapper there. And that is section B, number 3. I'm just going to put the little ticket right back on it because I can grab section 4, which is also a little small one. This time with the pinwheels up top, we've got the blue 18, I got a yellow 18, and then number 14. Right sides together. Okay, and I can bring that to the ironing board. I like leaving them under the clapper as long as I can. The longer you leave it under, the flatter your seam will be. So I'll put the ticket back on this one. Section B, number 4. And let that just cook for a minute, because now we'll do the last one, which is number 5. And we're going to put all of what we've done together now in number 5. So I'm going to grab block 8. That's this one here. Then I can grab section 3. And out from under the clapper, section 4. And I'll assemble the top part first. So these two sections, we've got section 3 on the left, section 4 with the pinwheels up on the right, and right sides together. I hope you're taking a minute as you put all of this together to just reflect on how much work you've put in here, how many seams you're now sewing together. You know, at one time, all these little squares were, you know, on a bolt of fabric, and now look at what you've created with it. It's really something to marvel, you know? It's impressive. I'm proud of you for getting this far. It's awesome. Okay, I'm going to press these seams at the ironing board. Okay, nice and flat. So now I'll take the top part and I'm going to attach it right sides together to block number 8. Oh, what a good fit. That feels nice. Okay, open it up. So nice. All right, to the ironing board. This is a project you're going to want to have your ironing board close by. This might also be a project that makes you bite the bullet and pick up one of these squared off ironing boards. for Christmas or something like that. Let me know if you want one. We've got them here. They're nice and squared off at the end. So big pieces like this are nice to use. It's nice to use with them. All right, that's great. Okay. So that's number 5 in section B. And next up is section 6, which is going to be getting all of the other B sections back together for a completion of the whole B. So we're going to start out, you can see here with the big one. So section 1 is going to go together with section 2. Try to find the space to lay it out. It's going to help. Even me with tons of space, there's always a lack of space. So there's one. Okay. And we're going to go right sides together. Now, this was the one that I had the little bit of hanging off at the end. I can try to make up for a little bit of this in the seam allowance rather than just trim it. And to do that, I'm just going to sew on the side where I can see where I need to make up for it. And kind of make up for it a little wee smidge. Make sure I'm not going too far over the edge. Just making sure we're lined up here. See how that's flipping up there? Needle down. A little bit of a hump. Come on. There we go. Nice and big. So cute. Okay, I'm not going to bring it to the ironing board yet because I still have the other third side to go on. We've got the little blocks facing up, the bigger block at the bottom, right sides together. I love seeing the big pieces come together. So exciting. Just take your time and make sure this is all lined up, especially when things aren't nesting. You really have to just take a minute and make sure you're not missing any seams, because maybe one block lines up a little better than another block. If you're lucky, it's one long straight line. But the reality is that doesn't always happen. But we can still do it. It still looks great. Just use a few more pins or a few more clips if you're struggling to have it be totally lining up by the end. And, you know, slow and steady, you know. It's already taken us a year, so what's another few minutes? Okay, now we can bring it to the big ironing board. Get a look at it. So cute with all the littles and the bigs. Go this way so you guys can see a little better. Okay, and then take a minute to the other side. Excuse me. Threads. And I'm just going to give it a nice spray again. What did I do with it? There it is. Why, it's way over here. Just hitting it with the flatter. Smells so nice. I think I've got Celebration in there right now. And I broke my bottle. I put it in one of our new water bottles. I love it. If you can kind of get it really nice and straight at this point, When it's a little easier to manage on your ironing board than when all of the sections are together. So if you do it now with the flatter, then you won't have as much to wrangle when it's really big. There we go. Nice and crisp and flat. Okay. That is section B. All right. I'm going to set this aside and we're going to start on section C. Okay, section C, number 1. Very big section here. Take my pin clips out. All right, we've got block 14 and 15 that will go right sides together and sewn together. And then we'll set block 2, the big one, aside. This is the second block 2. That's going to go here. But first, see it goes here. But first we need to put 14 and 15 together. And then 14 and 15, once they're together, go on block 7. This is block 7. So I've gone ahead and sewn 14 and 15 together. And we can go right sides together here. Make sure 14 is on the left, 15 is on the right. But nothing earth-shattering happens if it swaps. So I'm just trying to stick with the book. Okay. So this one sits up like this way. All right, I'll bring it to the ironing board and I'll bring over block 2. Lots of numbers going around. The little Post-its really do help keep you organized because there's a lot of sections, a lot of blocks. A lot of them look the same. They're doubled up, but used in different spots. So try to stay organized along the way. Okay. Make sure we've got this facing the right way. And then it's right sides together. Off to the ironing board here. Okay, that is section C, number 1. I'm just going to let that cook under the iron for a minute there, and I'm going to go and grab section C, number 2. And this one, we've got the other repeat of block 1, that big block. And we've got the repeat of block 14 and 11. So I've gone ahead and sewn those together. And just like we did before, we're going to be now attaching these two to block 6. So I'll set block 1 aside for a minute, lay out block 6, block 14 and block 11. And so those two are going to go together, and then they're going to come together with this one. Right sides together, and a 1/4 inch seam. There we go. And we're going to press this, and then we'll bring it to the big block 1. I can move the first section over out of the way for a minute. We'll come back to it. Get this pressed. Okay. And now the big block 1 goes on the left, and we want block 14 and 11. Is it 14 and 11? Yeah, 14 and 11 to be up top here. Just like this, and right sides together. When these get big, sometimes putting some pins or some clips will help. Let's press it. Okay, that is section 2C. So if we flip the page now, we've got sort of a big chunk here. We've got the 2 sections that we've just did, and then we've got a row of 3 blocks. So we want to grab, this is in section 3, but we've got blocks 4, 5, and 6, so just in a different order. And they're going to be assembled in their own little row. So section 3C, but there's a little bit more to do in section 3 than just this. So we've got these 3 blocks. We're going to start with block 6 at the top. Then we've got a repeat of block 4 and block 5. And so those 2, 6 and 4 go together. I've already sewn them. And then I'm going to put 5 right sides together to make a row of 3 going vertically. And right sides together and a 1/4 inch seam. Okay. And now I can press this. Get my other section out of the way for now, or come back to it. Okay, once you have those 3 blocks together, then you can grab the other 2 sections, 1 and 2, because you're going to make this big section here. So let's grab the first 2 that we did, 1 and 2, so 1 and 2, and we're going to put those together, and then we'll sew that the section that had the 3 blocks in it. So this is a very big section. Make sure things are going the right way. So we want to start with the big block on the right, and it's going to meet up with the 2 small blocks here and go right sides together. And we're going to sew along the seam that has those 2 blocks. Very big, very long. So we definitely want to be clipping and pinning here just to keep ourselves on track. Making sure that you're not losing any seam allowance, that one little piece of block isn't jetting out when another one isn't, you know what I mean? And sew on whatever side is going to help you see the oddities that are coming. If there's somewhere that's giving you a problem, make sure it's facing up so you can see it. Long seams here. Okay. Nice. So big. Okay, so now we can add those 3 blocks that we just did. Make sure block 6 is facing up. And now that original block 1 will be in the middle. Sorry, hold on. This way. In the middle at the bottom. But let's iron this first. If you're watching this before you make it, I just want to stress, you need some space. You know, even if you have your sewing machine on a little sewing table or whatever, maybe you want to bring this all to your dining room table, or at least have like a folding table or something that you can lay your big pieces out on. It's going to help. Okay, so with that original block 2 in the top right corner, and we've got our 2 little blocks, that's going to be the top. And then we can bring those 3, that row of 3 in, right sides together on the left-hand side here. Again, just always making sure that it's flush the whole way down. If you need any help or you're struggling in any way, just reach out to us. If you haven't joined the Homemade with Jennifer Tryon Facebook group, this is where so many people can post questions and post their finished quilt block or quilt top. They've been posting blocks along the way. But yeah, it would be great if you joined that. And if you have any questions about anything, you can leave them in there. You know, sewing and crafting related. Although we're good at life advice too. This is big. This whole quilt is a very big size. You're gonna be impressed when it's all done. Okay, whew, long one. All right, let's press it. I've got a little bit here that I missed. A little bit of seam allowance. I got a hole. Got to fix that. Okay, we're all good. There's nothing worse than discovering those little bits that you might miss that lead to a hole too late. Okay. That is section C. It's big. I love it. Okay, when we come back, section D. And just before I start section D, while the graphic is up, I'm just going to tell you, it's me, Jen. I'm going to voice over this section because we had some audio difficulty. So rather than re-record the whole thing, since I only have one barn star, I'm going to voice over this section. So that's what's going on. Okay, let's get started. So I'm starting section D by joining blocks 12 and 13. And I've already sewn together blocks 12 and 13, and that makes the left side unit. For right now, I'm sewing together blocks 13 and blocks 12, and then I'm connecting them to block 7 right sides together. And I'm going to use a clip right in the center there and sew it together with a 1/4 inch seam. Ignore me here on camera because remember, I'm voicing over this part. Just making sure that everything's staying nice and flush and lined up as we go. Okay, you're going to press that, and then you're going to get the second part of the first section ready with block 9, 10, and 12. So we've got the big block 9, and then you're going to make sure that block 10 and 12 get sewn together with a 1/4 inch seam, and then you're going to go right sides together, and again, you're going to sew those with a 1/4 inch seam. And again, we're going to give those a good press right at that seam. And again, it's much easier to take some time and press everything out right now before it gets too big. So then you're going to move on to the second part of section 1, which is basically sewing the 2 units that you've just made together. Make sure everything is nice and lined up. And sew a 1/4 inch seam. And then of course you're going to press this too. Oh, it looks so good. And you just set it aside. And now I'm just grabbing section 2 in the D section. This is going to be with block 15 and block 10, and they're going to be sewn together and then sewn to block 8. So you want to make sure block 15 ends up in the left-hand top corner with block 10 underneath, and then they're going to sew together to block 8 with right sides together. And once you get that lined up and pinned or clipped, then you can just sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And again, I'm taking it to the iron. Sorry about the audio trouble here, you guys, but this makes it quicker. Give it a good press. This is where those blocks and the clapper comes in handy. And then you'll take the second part of the second section here. And this is where we have to lay out all of our little pinwheels and flying geese. And it's actually important to note the order here because the flying geese that you made, basically block 17, 2 of them have more of a solid center, and that makes that sort of hourglass shape you see here in the middle. That's the middle of this chain. And then the other flying geese and pinwheels can flank it. But that color is shown in the book, and that's the color that we've got here in that row. So you're just going to go right sides together and put, 1 and 2 together, 3 and 4 together, but just make sure those colors line up in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that last one together, and then I'll have that whole chain done. So 1/4 inch seam, no need to really pin here. We're pretty well good to go. So I'm taking block 3, and then I'm going to add that row of the flying geese 17 and 18 right to the top there. Right sides together are nice and centered, and I'm just going to sew it 1/4 inch seam right along the top there. And of course, I'm going to press that, just making sure everything is lying nice and flat. And you've got all these points coming together now. Staying on top of the pressing is no joke. So now I'm going to take those 2 units, put them right sides together, and that's going to make the entirety of the second part of section D. And sew that 1/4 inch seam. Give it a good press, and now we've got that bigger part 2 section. There it is. Okay, I'm just going to set it aside and grab section 1 back, because now I need to put together section 1 and section 2, and that makes section 3. And then we're going to have sort of that long section D. And just sew that 1/4 inch seam. Give it a press. If you're loving that squared off ironing board, you can reach out to us at homemade.ca. We've got some. I know this is the time when you're doing big projects that having that extra space on the ironing board is really so helpful. Okay, that is section D in its entirety. So exciting. All there's left to do is put all of the sections together. Okay, so for this section here, if you look on page 43 of the book, we've got, it looks like the full quilt, but it's really section A, section B, section C, and section D. So A goes over here, D goes over here. So we're going to start with B and C so that they make a block big enough for D to fit onto the side of. And then when all 3 of those are together, it makes something wide enough for A to fit on. So I'm going to grab B and C to start. And these sections are big, okay? So I'm going to lay it out best I can, trying to have some sort of signals that we're in the right spot. So if I'm looking at section B, yep, I've got this block and then the 2 little pinwheels at the top. And then I'm looking to line it up in section C with that big number 2 block. So I've got it here, the big number 2 block, and it'll go right sides together. Right sides together at the bottom here. And you're definitely going to want to take a second to pin or clip this along the way because it's big and heavy. And you want to make sure things are staying lined up. And once you've got it all lined up, you can just sew that 1/4 inch. Make sure you're not having too much weight pulling on the needle. That's when things start to not sew straight. So you want to try to be absorbing as much weight as possible. So see kind of here how I've got my hands way back here. Yeah, we want to be absorbing some of the weight and not having it hang down on our needle. You can feel underneath and just making sure that things aren't flipping over. You can see that's about to flip. There we go. Okay, move all my pins here, or my clips, before I shuttle them all off the desk. All right, so B and C will need to be pressed right down the middle. Let's take a look. Oh, it's so nice, so nice. Let's press it so we can sew the other D side to it. All right. Oh, I'm finding a little previous hole, not even on one of my current seams. It's all right. This is the time. This is the time to check. Okay. between here and here. My iron switched off. There we go. I'm just doing it on the back here for that initial press down, and then I'll do it from the front side too. Okay. Now, because we've taken such care to be really pressing this along the way, there's not a whole lot of real ironing and pressing that has to happen here. Each panel is pretty secure or pretty wrinkle-free. The odd spot here that's got a bit of, oh, it's bent the opposite way. Just a second. There we go. Okay, so once you've got B and C together in this big, massive sheet, let's make sure we've got our top where it needs to be. Remember the two little pinwheels are now at the top right, so that's good. I'm going to try to match those up, when space is of the issue, or you want to make, okay, I've got these two, that's those two right there. So when I go and grab D, I'll line it up with these two blocks. Spill some more pins and clips. Try not to step on them. So there, I've got those two at the top. You can see. And that's where they're going to line up. So right sides together. Clip. So many clips on the floor. Hold on. Space. I know you guys can relate to crowded spaces. You're probably like, what's she complaining about? This is a beautiful space, but quilt tops are big, especially when they go together in these big sections like this and not just like one block at a time. I'm excited to pick the backing, and I'm excited to I'm going to long arm mine. So I'm going to do a special bonus episode of this quilt along and take you through the long arming. But you can decide to quilt it any way you like, with any backing you want. The book is suggesting a navy binding, but I also would argue that there's so much leftover fabric that you could have a very successful scrappy binding and use what you've got left over. All right, that's together now. Okay, don't Remember, if you're thinking this might be too much quilt to run through your little sewing machine, you can see today I'm sewing on the Janome 3160 QDC, great little machine. But it doesn't have tons of throat space. If you're thinking that you may want to quilt this yourself and need something with a bit bigger throat space, reach out to me. If you've been involved in the Barn Star, we'll make sure that you get a great deal. Or if you are wanting us to quilt this for you, remember you can, even if you live far, we will send you a shipping label and we will get you to package up your quilt. We'll send you a label. We'll arrange the pickup via courier. Send us your Barn Star and I will quilt it for you on the long arm. And we can send you the info because we've got special pricing. It's about $199 to get your Barn Star long armed, which is a fabulous deal considering the size of the quilt for sure. So with that, you would send us the batting and the backing, and we will long arm it for you for $199. Or if you're doing any of our free motion classes, maybe you'll want to take a chance on this and do a bit of free motioning. A quilt like this is great for like free motion quilting, especially if you're a beginner, because it's going to be extremely forgiving on the quilting. The quilting is not going to be the star of this quilt because it's so busy and so scrappy that you can't help but have all the little blocks just meld together. So this is a great one to start on if you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll try free motioning. All right, let's press this. And then we've just got one more long seam. Checking for any little holes or anything. Looks pretty good. Okay. All right, let's find our top point again. Right here. Yes. Is it this one? Yes, right here. Top. I want to find the top so that we know where we're putting it together with the right seam. Okay. Now I got to grab the A section. And this is the top here, this big block, right where I tick it. Just confirm, like our big block here is meeting this block here with right sides together. Okay. Clip. Thanks for coming along this Barnstar journey with me. I've wanted to make this quilt for a few years now. I've seen other sampler quilts like this and just always really been in awe of them and never took the plunge myself to just do it. So when we decided last year to do a block of the month, I thought this is going to be the one. This is going to be how I finish it, because having some external accountability is always helpful. At least I've always found that to be true. Yeah. I'm really glad that we've made this and that you've come along with me. It's made it much more fun. All right, let's get this last seam going here. We don't want that weight on our needle, so just making sure that the table or you like your body over your shoulder, something's absorbing some of the weight so that it's not pulling down on the needle. If you do need to stop, it's always good to stop with your needle down so you don't lose your spot. So for the backing of this quilt, you need 7.5 yards. You'll need to piece it. Or you can use 2.5 yards of, the book says 110 wide fabric, but I'm cognizant that most wide backs are 108 wide, but I think it'd be fine. 2.5 yards. Maybe you could get 2 3/4 just for good measure. This is also the kind of quilt that if you are doing like an edge-to-edge long arm design on, because the quilting is largely going to get lost on the front of a design like this because of just how wild the front is, it could be the kind of thing that if you did a solid like navy on the back with like a yellow or a white thread, that the back becomes a solid whole cloth quilt and you enjoy the design of the quilting on the back only. So that's something to think about with a quilt like this, because often using solids is a little less expensive for the backing, especially when you need so much. So if you wanted to grab some solids from us, we can help you there. Or maybe you have some in your stash. And that would be a great way to showcase the quilting, is to put an opposing color thread and showcase the quilting on the back. So it's going to flip. Okay. Yes. Just press one more seam. She's big. Okay. It's together. It's big. Okay, I'm going to move over here and we'll take a look at the whole thing. Okay. So nice. Look at this. Wow. It's beautiful. I'm so proud of us. We've done it. This is no small feat. This was a very big quilt and a lot of different pieces. You know, it's one thing when every single block is the same, but you know, something like this, it's really a work of art. I couldn't be happier for us to have finished this. And the fact that we did it together is a huge bonus. I hope you've enjoyed the 2024 Block of the Month Club now that we're to this final stage. Now, don't leave it as just a quilt top. Splurge and get it long-armed if you don't think you can do it yourself. We have a special deal on long-arming. I can help you with that. Just send us your batting and your backing, or we can include that in your order, no problem at all. And give some thought to what you want to use on the back. I love the idea of a solid being on the back with an opposing color thread. That way you have a whole separate quilt that's all in a, let's say, navy with like a yellow thread. And then you get to enjoy that beautiful quilting on one side and the spectacular piecing of the Barn Star sampler on the other. So give some thought to how you want to quilt your quilt and reach out to us if you have any questions. You can do that either by emailing in to info@homemade.ca or be joining the Homemade with Jennifer Tryon Facebook group. We're always posting things in there and helping each other out with whatever you are sewing. So stay tuned for a special extra bonus episode of this quilt along when I quilt this up myself. And I guess maybe we'll see you next year. Should we do another one? Is it too soon? Stay tuned. You'll find out. Thanks so much for watching and well done, everyone. See you next time.